and welcome back to The Private Record. We got a very, 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 very harrowing story for you on this episode. Our guest, Zach, was actually working on that show. He's a crew dude. I love crew dudes. TV crew guys. I will always get along with a TV crew dude. And Zach is sort of like a specialized TV crew guy. He was working on that show. It's like the biggest show in the world right now, Yellowstone, on Paramount. And he works in the, I believe it's the aerial photography department, you know, in shows like Yellowstone, when they get the big, expansive fields and cattle roaming and mountains and the beautiful stuff that they shoot from helicopters. That's Zach. And Zach was, as these shows tend to do when they want to get sunsets or sunrises, they go to work really, really late or really, really early. It's in like that weird window of like when no one is ever awake. And he, on his way back from a long day of work, he's not from the area. Not that it would have mattered, because when the weather is this bad, it doesn't matter how expert you are at traveling these roads. He was driving his truck. The truck turned, flipped on black ice, and he ended up, and I'm not going to give any more away than this, but he ended up upside down in his truck on a frozen lake, and the lake broke. The ice broke, and the truck started sinking. Okay, I'm done. I'm not going to say any more. It's crazy, though, all right? I was very excited to talk to Zach. Zach is a really, really cool, easygoing dude, a regular dude, ordinary dude. Extraordinary story is exactly what he is. Perfect for the show. Very happy with how this one turned out. I hope you guys like it too. If you want to be a guest on the show, go to theprivaterecord.com and submit yourself as a potential guest. Of course, follow us on socials, TikTok and Instagram at The Private Record. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Private Record. Like and comment, and absolutely, if you care about me at all, even just a little bit, even just that much, share with your friends. Tell everybody you know about the wonderful, great, beautiful show, sexy show, The Private Record, that you love so much. That would be amazing. I would appreciate you even more than I already do, which is a whole lot. Thank you very much. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the episode. Enjoy Zach. And I hope you don't sweat too much at his near-death experience story. Thank you very much. All right, man. So, yeah, let's jump in. Welcome to The Private Record. Why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit, a headline maybe, or genre of your story, and we'll get going.
My name is Zach Storr. I'm a camera operator. I've been doing it for like 12 years, and I also work on aerial teams and stuff like that on feature films and movies, or movies and TV shows, I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. I guess the genre of my story, I mean, I like to say it's an action adventure.
That's perfect. Yeah, you're in the industry, so that's good. You actually have like the actual film genre of it. Yeah, action adventure. Yeah. That is amazing. All right, let's get right into it.
Okay, it was the end of October 2017, and I was working on a TV show called Yellowstone. It was the first season, I believe. So the show hadn't even like come out yet.
Yeah, 2017. When did that show even come out? Like that was 2019?
2018 when it started. Yeah, because it was this was first season stuff. Right. Even I didn't really know too much of what it was about, because you know how it is when you shoot things. Like sometimes if it's not your project, you're like, the fuck is.
Yeah. Also, like Paramount Plus, it was like that was new at the time. Nobody really knew anything about it. I didn't know shit about Yellow. People started talking about it once it was a big thing, and I was like, what the fuck is this, you know?
Yeah, I was working on it. People were like, this is going to be a good one. This is going to be a big one. And I'm like,
yeah,
okay,
I bet. Yeah.
So I was doing an aerial team at the time. And a lot of times, like I have a buddy that's an aerial DP, and his dad is like one of the best pilots in the world. That's been doing it for 40 years, 50 years on like every movie you can think of. And so they would start to hire me. I'm a camera operator by trade, where it's just like literally on my shoulder shooting stuff. But they started hiring me to do stuff as far as like ground coordinating, because I sort of knew how shots work and cameras worked. So I would be put on sets to sort of like work with the director or the coordinator and stuff like that, to sort of say like, okay, you know, and I was kind of the middleman between like the pilot and cinematographer in the helicopter and the people on the ground. So this day we were doing like it was like action unit, which is just like, I mean, but for people that
Yeah.
don't know, it's like a separate team that go out and shoot specific shots.
Mm-hmm.
And this day we were like we were just tracking cars through kind of like the Montana wilderness.
Okay.
So we started our day, and it was like probably and usually when you're on set, if you're a certain distance away from places, they put you in a hotel.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in Montana, that's not really an option. If you've ever been there,
Yeah.
there's
You
just
know what's weird? Actually, I shot briefly. I was actually in a movie that shot in Montana right around, I think it was Yellowstone's second season, and everybody
yeah,
had worked on Yellowstone
yeah,
because that's like the big show there by then.
yeah.
But
There's a lot of local crew.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. It sure
out of
seemed like it.
Missoula.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so like, yeah, in Montana, it's not really an option where it's
No.
like
Yeah.
sometimes you might have to wake up and drive 3 hours
Yeah.
to get to set location and then 3 hours back because there's
Yeah.
nothing in between. Um, so yeah, this day was like I had because I was coordinating, I was driving. We have like a truck that's like has all of our gear, but also has jet fuel tanks on the back of it.
Uh-huh.
Um, and for me, it's like if we have a helicopter that lands at 9 a.m. on set, I need to be there at like 7, so I can
Wow.
find a landing zone
So there's
with the
call time,
AV.
and then there's when you got to show up, which is
Yeah,
call time's already way earlier, and then you're talking
yeah,
about you're even earlier
yeah.
than that.
Well, I have to go establish landing zone, make sure nobody like gets near when the helicopter's landing or taking
Right.
off. It's just super
And then
dangerous, and that's
plus
why.
travel time. So we're talking you're leaving like midnight probably, something like that.
It was like 4 a.m. call or something for me, and I had to
Sheesh.
drive, and it was snowing that morning, and I'm from Arizona. I live in Arizona, so like South Arizona. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
I live in the desert, so my driving skills when it comes to cold they don't exist.
It's a whole other thing, dude. Anybody who hasn't driven in the cold, it is you might be the best driver in the world. If you've never driven in snow or in the cold, you are a
You've
rookie.
never,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
especially a Chevy 3500, which is a very large
Yeah, I can't even
truck,
imagine. Yeah.
um, full of jet fuel. I think it holds 200 gallons. There's two separate tanks that hold 200 gallons. So you start the day with 200 gallons of jet fuel, which luckily is a really high burn point. Like you can throw a match on jet fuel, a lit match, and it won't ignite. It
Really?
takes a lot of heat. Yeah.
Whoa, okay.
Um, but so I get to set and we work our day, and it's a pretty long day. We just a bunch of tracking shots and blah blah blah. And they get what they need. But what I hadn't been told was like we were ending our day in an area where there was another hotel.
Mm.
Um, so a lot of the crew was going to stay there and then and basically go back in the morning. But because they were landing the helicopter on set the next morning, like the actual Dutton Ranch set
Mm.
near Hamilton, I kind of wanted to be there so I could establish landing zone, and I had no idea that people were staying, so I hadn't brought in any clothes or anything.
Mm.
So I was like, screw it, I'll just drive the truck back after the work day, and then I'll meet you guys. You guys stay here because they can't fly in the dark
Mm-hmm.
in this area, and because of mountains and stuff. So I'll just be at set in the morning. You guys land, and then we'll be good. So we'd worked all day, and it was dark at this point. But it was one of those locations where it was like you get out to location, and for 12 hours of your day, your phone just says no service.
Right. You're in the middle of absolute nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah, it's literally in the middle of nowhere. So I go to leave, and it's about a 2.5 hour drive back, or maybe 3 hours, depending on like how cold it is and stuff. And it had snowed and sort of sleeted on the way in, but it was a fairly warm day.
Okay.
And at this point, it's like 9 o'clock at night, or
Okay.
8:30 or so. So I'm leaving to go back, and I drive. I got probably like 2 hours into the drive, and I was like maybe an hour outside of the crew is based in like Hamilton. It's a town called Hamilton. You fly into Missoula,
Mm.
drive to Hamilton, and that's where like kind of hotels and all that
Mm-hmm.
crap are. So I'm heading back there, and it wasn't snowy or anything. It was clear at that point, but I didn't. It didn't really connect to me like, oh, the grounds would be wet
Yeah.
from earlier in the day. And there was this really like when you're heading towards that location, there's a really windy like narrow mountain pass that you go through.
Mm-hmm.
And it was tricky in the morning in the snow. Like there were cars that had slid kind of slow motion off the side of the road. But I'm like 2 hours into a drive, and it's a long day, so I'm just like flying along in this truck by myself, thankfully. And I look down kind of at my GPS for a second to see like how far I am, like my phone's sitting in my lap.
Right.
And I look up, and the truck's like this, sideways in the road. Like in 1 second, I look up and the truck is sideways, and I'm moving at about, I want to say like 60, 65.
Oh my God. So did you
And
even
it's just
feel it happen under you? Okay. So
nope.
it's just like you're feeling fine. You look down for a second, you look up, and then you're just.
You know the feeling when you just kind of glance at your phone and
Yep.
look up, and
Totally.
it's like that long. Yeah. So I did that, and when I did, the truck was sideways, and I think, oh shit, and like I'm going, and it's black ice, and you don't, I mean, you don't see it
No.
at all.
It's the
So
scariest part about it. You know, you have no idea it's even there.
Yeah, my desert brain, I'm just like, yeah, the roads
Right.
are looking good.
Yeah.
So I'm sliding, and and like in that split second, I know in my head, like when I hit the other side of this road, it's on. Like
Yeah.
and boy, was it on. So I kind of went across the lane, hit the dirt, and then it just commenced to flipping.
Oh God. Oh my
And
God.
that's a real sensation if you've never flipped in a vehicle.
I haven't. No.
Yeah, and it was crazy because I could sort of feel like when you were flipping, I could like feel my head hitting the cold ground, like the snow on the side of the road as I was flipping. I remember that for some reason. And then it was an older truck, so it had like that bright green time in it, and I could just see the green glow of like the time.
Whoa, dude.
And it was
Oh
just
my
flipping.
God. Do you have any idea how many times you flipped?
It felt like a lot. I've heard from like Highway Patrol, it was, between probably 2, but possibly 4. It felt like, I mean, who knows? I wasn't like, oh, there was 1.
Yeah, you're just counting 1, 2. Yeah.
Just like stay alive.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
So I flipped a bunch of times, and then I never lost consciousness or anything. But like to my surprise, when I came to a stop upside down, and like on that road there was like a small, I wouldn't say small, but it was like a stream running like kind of parallel to that road.
Okay.
And I flipped into that.
I mean, dude, how big was the stream? Are we talking like the worst luck in the world, or was there no way to
The truck
not?
sunk. It submerged.
So you're on it. Was it frozen, or you just started
It
going
was
right?
frozen. It broke through
Right away.
So I actually sent a picture. You can see the Highway Patrol sent me a picture, and there's just giant chunks of icebergs floating around the truck.
Oh my, yeah, I did look at that. Gee, okay, wow, okay. I mean,
Yeah, the Highway Patrol sent me that later. But
so I kind of want to talk about your mind state. Like, what do you even have any memory of what was going through your mind at this time?
oh, 100%, dude. 100%.
Yeah, walk me through it a little bit, because you're flipping. I can only imagine how scary that is. Then you end up. For how long were you, or did it just break right away, or were you sitting on the ice for a little while?
No, it just broke.
Just broke.
I was flipping, and then I was underwater.
Okay, wow, Jesus.
Ice water. And it was tricky because it was like I was in a jacket, and then I had a sweater on, and then I had a thermal on,
Yeah.
and then I had jeans on, and I had thermals on under my jeans,
Yeah.
and I had thick socks, and I had like work boots.
Uh-huh.
I was like, I mean, my son was 3 at the time. So like my first thought was like, oh, this is not, I'm not drowning. Like I got to get out of this.
Right.
Like that first, it's weird when people say like time slows down when something like that happens. It really does feel like a lot longer than it actually is. I felt like I was processing a lot quickly.
Yeah, your brain kind of goes into overdrive and like
it was
takes
really
in
interesting.
more information, which makes sense. The sensation of time slowing, because it's just your brain's just fully on. You know.
I feel like I could just feel myself thinking, clearly in that moment where I was like, oh no, my backpack's in here, like shit like that.
Right.
Who cares? Like,
yeah.
And then I sort of in my brain, like because I'd flipped so fast, it didn't really like click in my brain that like, oh, the windows are broken out. So I'm thinking like, oh, I'm gonna have to kick a window out.
Yeah.
And so I open my eyes underwater, and I can still see that freaking green glow in the truck, and I'm just like feeling around with my arms, and then like my arm sort of scrapes what I feel like, because the truck's upside down.
Yeah.
I'm feeling like the door panel.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And I think it was on the passenger side. And then at that point, I sort of just grab the door panel and just pull, and then all of a sudden, like literally I felt like a fucking dolphin. I went like right out of the truck
Whoa.
and like out. I come up and like the water's like this high, and I'm just standing there, and I just remember the moon was really full, and I'm just like trying to collect what the fuck's going on. Like just like what just happened.
How
Like
long were you? I mean, obviously you're not counting, but like
I
you
couldn't have
were.
been under the water more than 10 seconds. It realistic. I feel like I was so fast.
So you
Like
just immediately
I
are.
took my seatbelt off and
Yeah.
just started searching
Right.
and
Right.
like
Right.
searching.
And you couldn't see because it's so dark under there. I would imagine, right?
I
I
just
mean,
saw that green light,
right.
but I
Okay.
couldn't really see. I
Yeah.
opened my eyes and I could see like a glow, but I was just feeling
Wow,
the
dude. Oh my God, that is so terrifying.
um so and then I like when I did it, I came out on the far side of the truck, like the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So the road was on the so between the road and me was the truck
Right.
in the
Right.
water. So I climbed on top of the truck, floating in the water.
Mm-hmm.
Like I lifted myself up, and I'm thinking like I haven't seen a car
Yeah.
in 2 hours.
Yeah.
My phone isn't working, and now I'm in like 8 layers of clothes that just got dunked in ice water, and
Soaking wet in freezing ice
it's
water. Yeah.
below freezing outside. So
That's
I'm
like a
fuck.
whole other survival
Yeah,
tale. Like that.
that's like part two.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, it's just as dangerous. It's just the clock is like a little less,
yeah. I
you know,
didn't die
impressing on
flipping.
you.
I didn't
Yeah,
drown,
right.
and now I have to figure out how the fuck to get out of this mountain pass. Uh,
Do you at least
in the
have like
middle.
a flicker of relief about the first parts? Like you survived the crash, you didn't drown.
Yeah,
Are you like, fuck
yeah,
yeah? And then you're like,
yeah.
oh wait, no, this is another scenario where I could
I didn't
easily
really think
die.
like, oh no, now like I just thought like, okay, like my brain immediately went into, okay, how do I get out of this?
Yeah,
How do I get
right,
out of this? How do I
right.
get out of this? It
Yeah.
was like there was just this weird like clear thinking drive that just like took over where so I get on top of the truck and I'm kind of looking around, and then like the moon's really full so I can see the road a little bit. So I jump back into the water to swim to the edge, and when I do I see like a glow in the water. So I grab it and it's my cell phone lit up, and it's
What?
cracked. It's really, really cracked.
Yeah.
So I grab it, I climb to the side of the road, and this was before like satellite SOS on your iPhone. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like trying to do like the emergency thing,
Yeah.
but it's just so it was like cracked really, really bad,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm just standing in the road, and then I start to see blood, and I'm like I can't figure out where it's
Oh
coming
my
from.
God. Yeah.
I can't figure out where it's coming from, and then I'm just like, okay, what I have two choices. Like I can like but I think my adrenaline was running so fast I didn't really realize how cold I was
Mm-hmm.
at the time. Because I mean, but I was in layers, like layers and layers.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'm like, well, my phone doesn't work and I haven't seen a car in forever. So I just turn on my flashlight. So in
Oh, the
case,
phone, right? Yeah.
yeah, the flashlight still works.
I can't
So
believe
I'm
the
just like, in
phone works
case,
at all. That's crazy.
dude, I couldn't believe it. It was floating in the water, like face down, and I see like the water glowing. So I grab it and I'm like, holy shit, my phone.
Wow, dude. Wow.
And then I just start walking sort of in the middle of the road in the direction I was driving.
Mm-hmm.
But I like I said, I hadn't seen anybody or anything for a long time.
And what time is
and
it
so
now even? It's late,
it's like
right?
9 o'clock.
Okay, okay.
It's like between 9 and 9:30, I think. And so I just start walking, and then I'm thinking like, what the fuck do I do? And I'm like, my hands were really bloody, but I couldn't tell where it was coming from. And I'm trying to untie my boots because I was just thinking like, oh, when you get wet in freezing water, you're supposed to take your clothes off. So I'm like trying to take my clothes off,
Yeah.
but it's like I'm stumbling down this road, and then to the left of me, I see like what is like a campsite sign.
Oh.
But it's like way out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm like, okay, I can either risk going up to this campsite that looks pitch black
Yeah.
or keep walking down this road. And I'm like, oh, I'm in a mountain pass. So if I yell, it'll echo.
Right.
So I just start yelling help loud, like super loud. And you can
Uh-huh.
hear it like really reverberating. And I'm just like walking down the road. And it's been like, I want to say like 5 minutes. And I can like feel cold now. I feel super cold now. And then I hear a noise and I stop, and I'm like, oh, it's that river running. And then all of a sudden, like the woods, like 100 yards behind me, I see truck lights come flying out of the woods. So I wave my flashlight,
Mm-hmm.
and this truck comes over, pulls over, and jumps out, and it's these two older dudes, and they're camping at that campsite.
Yeah.
And they're brothers, and they're retired highway patrolmen.
I mean, wow.
And I'm like, at this point, I'm like, my clothes are covered in blood, and I guess I'd been touching my face, so my face was covered in
Oh
blood.
my God, they must have been like, this is
And they're
from
like,
hell.
yeah. So they jump out and they're like, "Were you by yourself?" And I was like, "No, I was by
Yeah, right.
myself." And then they start just sort of like grabbing me and sort of looking at me, like digging through my
Yeah,
hair
yeah.
and all that stuff to see where the blood's coming from. And then one of them goes over to the truck, and then the other one just uh, takes like one of those like scissors that like paramedics have,
Yeah, yeah.
just starts cutting my shit off me. Like
Wow.
all my clothes, starts pulling them off of me, and just throws me in his truck, and I'm just like bleeding in this dude's nice Ford, whatever it is. Um, and he just cranks the heat, and his brother's like, "I'll stay here." And they're like, "So you have two choices." They're like, "We can take you to our campsite and try and get a hold of somebody, or we can just go to town." He's
Right.
like, "But the road's icy; it's going to be slow."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's like, I'm like, "Let's just go. Let's go to town and
Yeah.
like ask questions like, do you know your name? Do you
Right.
know all this stuff?" And I'm answering them and stuff. And he's got like a radio in his truck, and he's trying to radio, but it's not. So I drive with this guy for 45 minutes before we even get to a point where we can make a phone call, and it's like super
Wow,
like
dude.
we're having to drive like 5 to 10 miles an hour. And he's like, "Yeah, you got to drive pretty slow." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, so 65 was probably
Yeah, that you
in
realize your
retrospect, 65 was
possible
probably a bad choice."
mistake. Yeah. I mean, what's that conversation like in the car with this dude?
Well, first he's like, "What are you doing out here?"
Yeah.
And I'm trying to explain to him, and he was asking me like, "Are you drunk? Are you on drugs?"
Right.
Which I wasn't, and so and then he's just like, "Okay, well, as soon as we get to service, you can call whoever you need to call." And yeah, it was like 45 minutes, and then
Jesus.
I just remember I just kept apologizing for bleeding Oliver's truck, and
Oh,
we
man.
still hadn't figured out like where the bleeding itself was
Yeah, I was
coming
gonna
from.
ask, like, how is
The
that?
first thing I asked was like, "Is my head bleeding?" And I
Right.
just remember them digging through my hair, like with the light of the headlights of that truck, like looking, and they're like, "No, I don't think so." They're like, "Your face is really bloody though," and they're like looking me over, and we can't figure it out.
So there's
And
no
that's
active blood coming out of you anymore then, is
not
that
like
right?
my chest or anything, but then I realized it's coming from my hands.
Oh, right.
So
Okay.
like my hands are bleeding, and I'm touching everything, and
Right,
I'm just
okay,
spreading
yeah.
that shit all around.
Yeah.
Um, and then we finally get to like service, and my wife at that time was at Target in LA. We lived in LA at the time.
Okay.
And I called her, and I just like, I don't even know how do you breach that phone
Dude,
call?
what, like, yeah, it's like, I think about that when something really is going down and like you don't
Yeah.
want to just fling it onto someone.
Yeah.
You're like, you start with like, I am okay.
Yeah,
That's first
I
off,
prefaced it
right?
with like, okay, the good news is I'm alive.
Yes,
Well, I
exactly.
didn't say that, but and then I sort of explained best of what I could, like what had happened. And according to her side of the story, she just left a basket full of
Oh, I
stuff in
bet.
Target.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
And left. And then my friend, who is one of my longtime closest friend, my friend Ryan, he was at the hotel where I had mentioned previously, and my phone starts ringing, and he calls me, and he's like, she had sort of explained it, but I don't know how well she'd explained it. And he calls me super panicked. He's like, "What is going on?" So I explained sort of what I could, and then the police officer, Tom, his name's Tom, the guy that saved me. He's like, "Yeah, you should see an ambulance any moment. And we're just out in the middle of nowhere, and then an ambulance literally just pulls up, and we just pull over to the side of the road, and they just come over, and the remaining clothes I had on, other than like my underwear, they just cut off, put a neck brace on me, and then threw me in the ambulance, and then off to this small local hospital we went. But I mean, that was pretty much the craziness of it. Was like, I mean, I've sort of dissected with my friends, like all the ways I could have died.
Yeah, I mean,
Or
how the tally has got to be
combination.
high, you know?
Yeah,
There's
the combination
a number of
like,
ways.
well, you could have just died flipping. You could have, you know,
You could have got knocked out
or,
flipping and then just
or-
not been
or,
able to
yeah.
wake up when you're drowning. You know what I mean?
or broke like a limb to the extent that I couldn't get out of the
Oh,
truck.
dude. Or the car smashes you and you're pinched in and you
did
can't
see
get out.
you see the photos of how smashed
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's like there's a number of.
it
I
was
mean,
a number of ways I could, and then I obviously, you know, froze to death,
yeah,
or you know,
of
I
course.
just died of hypothermia right there just from exposure.
Well, that was my next question. Like, once I find that when shit like this goes down, you start to really take an inventory of or you kind of can't take stock of what is going on until you've reached safety. And
Right.
then like, you get to this small hospital. Is it then that you're like, holy shit, I'm like so cold. I don't know if I'll ever be warm again. Like what's
Yeah.
like, when do you start to finally take a second to check in with yourself rather, in like a way that is not like completely hectic, chaotic,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They take me to a hospital room, and then they sort of they're like, okay, I think they took my blood, right, for toxicology, just to make sure I
Right.
wasn't like
Yeah.
lit up or anything like
Yeah.
that, which I wasn't. Right? There
Yeah.
was nothing in my system at that point. So I'm just laying there, and I'm just like, oh yeah, like my mom probably knows about
Right.
this,
Right.
So I'm like sitting there, and then I grab my phone, and I'm sort of just looking at my hands. My hand, it was only my right hand that was like,
Uh,
I got 4 stitches in my pinky right here. You can sort of see the scar.
oh
Oh.
yeah. 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 I
Um,
mean,
so I'm just laying there, sort of recollecting what happened, thinking like what the fuck? And I'm like, it felt weird that all that had happened, and all I could really figure out what was wrong with me was like my hand was bleeding a little bit.
right.
I'm just laying there in a neck brace, and just like this quiet, dark hospital room, like.
Dude.
And then I'm like, I should text my mom. And then I look at my phone, and like my phone was cracked, but then I had bloody hands, so like my phone screen was just filled with blood,
Yeah, I
essentially.
bet.
Because
Yeah. Yeah.
so yeah, I made a few phone calls and was just like, yeah, I'm good, I'm good. And then the people that I work for, Craig and Ryan Hosking, who are the nicest people in the world. They're like legendary, like aerial pilot and cinematographers. I guess my wife had spoken to Craig, who was the pilot, and he was like, yeah, he had booked her and my son, a flight like then. So like they were like heading to the airport in LA. Like we lived in like Woodland Hills at the time. And like they were like they were on their way like early, the first flight out or whatever it was.
So then they arrived soon. You got to see them
The next day.
right?
Yeah, the next day. But I was in the hospital like for 4 hours, and it was a trippy experience where you were just like.
So you only needed to stay there for 4 hours? You were just fine, basically.
They did a CT scan to make sure like my brain wasn't bleeding
Right.
or anything. They took X-rays of my hand just because my hand was injured, and then make sure there was anything. I was in a neck brace for like quite a while, which I had never been in before. So I had a really bad headache, and they're like, "Do you want something for like the pain?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And I was thinking like, they'll come and bring me like some Tylenol to swallow, but they had run an IV line, and I was not really paying attention, and I didn't know that she had put medication into it.
Oh boy, yeah.
And I was like, "What did you just give me?" And she was like, "Oh, it was diluted,
yeah.
dilaudid." So I was thinking Tylenol, and I got dilaudid.
That fucked you up more than any other thing that you went through that night. Yeah.
Yeah. And then at that point, they're like, "Oh, the cops want to come in and talk to you," and I'm like, "No,
not now. Now I seem fucked up. Yeah.
This is terrible."
Yeah.
And I was vomiting from it and stuff like that.
Oh God.
So they came in and hit me with the reversal.
Oh.
And I was fine. And then the cops came in and super nice. They were just asking me questions and all that. And I know they'd gotten my blood and stuff in the ambulance just to see what was going on. And I sort of explained it as I knew it to have happened.
Geez. I mean, they must see that kind of shit all the time. Were they like?
Probably.
I mean,
yeah, they're like, "You got lucky. People die on that road."
That's what I was going to say. They must have been
Weekly.
like, you're so lucky to be here right now. Like,
yeah, that was kind of the sentiment where they were like, people die on that road nonstop. Like, and if you do drive through it on the daytime, you just see crosses everywhere.
Oh, dude, that shit bugs me out, man. When I drive by something like that, it's just like, it's fucking
I had driven
scary.
that road again later on another season, and I was just seeing all the crosses, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
That must have been a trippy experience for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I stopped right where I wrecked, and like I took a picture of it and stuff.
Yeah.
But it was yeah. I mean, I and I at the time it was the show was contracted or was being produced by Paramount, and they were
Hmm.
like super good about it. Like I didn't have to do. I mean, you do like start paperwork on a job and blah blah blah. But as
Yeah.
far as like the hospital stuff, like I didn't have to. I had to sign one thing.
Oh, and they took care of everything.
Oh yeah, it
Whoa.
was like taking care of like because I was so far out, like they were there waiting for me
Right,
essentially.
right, right. Yeah.
Like whoever worked on the show that was doing that, they were like when I came out of the ambulance, they were there
Mr.
already.
and Mrs. Paramount took care of you, dude.
Yes, whoever it was, I don't. They were
um,
super good about it.
well, that's good because sometimes, dude, honestly, I've heard many stories where the show that someone's on while they get hurt, they just
Oh
worry about the liability top to bottom. They're not worried about the human being at all. And I mean, unions get crazy, rightfully get crazy about this stuff because
yeah,
there's the driving, there's the long day, there's the call time edition, but then there's the travel, and that shit
yeah,
adds up, and you're having like next thing you know, you're like it's like a 19-hour day, and
yeah.
so when you're
Yeah,
driving
and it was
back,
that,
you're
and
gonna
I
fall
had made
asleep
the
anyway.
choice.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, no, go ahead.
I and I just made the choice to drive back, and
Yeah.
I mean, on that looking back now, I was like, bad choice. I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, they were super. I mean, they were super helpful about it and stuff like that. The problem was, is I was there, and the only person I knew on the show was 3 hours away in a hotel,
Mm.
and now I have no clothes,
Yeah.
and I have no idea where my hotel is in like respect to where I am in this hospital.
Right. Right.
So I just like pull out my phone and I'm just reading the call sheet, and I see one name on the camera department that I like of a person that I know. I know her much better now, but at the time I'd only worked on like one other show with her, and her name
Uh
was
huh.
Angel. I just text her or I called her and I'm like, "Can you come pick me up?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Yeah, I hardly." And I was like, "Can you bring me clothes too?" And she was like, "Yeah." And then so
There's a
because
weird. She's like, "What the fuck is with this guy?" Yeah.
yeah, they cut my clothes off of me, so it was just like nothing.
What were you even? Were
Uh,
you just in a gown?
yeah, I was just in a gown, pretty much. I was just and I was just covered in like dirt and soot and stuff because like I guess when I went under, I must have pulled water in. So for like days, like if I leaned over like this, like black water came out of my nose with like rocks in it, and I was like pulling rocks out of my like little tiny rocks out of my ears for like a week.
Bro, that is
Um,
the weirdest thing about the whole story. I gotta say, like
dude,
that is
I swear
so
to God,
fucking strange.
it felt weird, and if I leaned forward, just like brown like dirt water would come out of my nasal passage. It was so super bizarre.
Whoa! Did you feel like
Um,
looking back? Did your head feel heavy and fucking weird throughout, or
it
were you
felt
good pretty
I
much?
felt like I couldn't hear very well, but
Right.
like yeah,
Yeah.
and then they ended up giving me like they just had some old ladies come and just like wipe me down pretty much.
Right.
Like some nurses came in and they were like running like whatever the thing is they use to clean your ears and stuff. And when
Hmm.
they did, they were like, "My God, you have tons of rocks in your ears, like tons of rocks." And I was like,
It's like the expression, you call someone so dumb they got rocks in their heads. That was
"Yeah,
literally
I
you.
literally had rocks in my head
Yeah.
from being
Damn, that
dumb."
is. Yeah, except it wasn't because you're dumb. It was because you almost drowned in a sinking truck in the middle of
Yeah,
fucking nowhere. Um,
it
dude, do you like when you think about it now? Do you have? Because obviously, like we were saying before, like when you're going through it, it's total. It's just to use a dumb expression. It's all hands on deck. You're not
right.
reflecting at all. Like, do you think about little things that could have gone, just the minutia of the event? It's just like it's all happening so fast. One little thing goes slightly differently, and you don't come out of there. Like, was there
Yeah,
shit there that you think back on, and you kind of not that you harp on it, but that it's like the thing you think about when you think back on it?
yeah. I mean, for me, it was like never traumatic. Like I never saw it as like it was traumatic, but it never affected me. Sort of like
Sure.
a
Yeah.
traumatic thing. So
Yes.
I I've always had a pretty easy time just
Mm-hmm.
talking about it and
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Like it doesn't. I mean, when you work in TV for that long, you've sort of grown not to. I don't know. Things just don't bother you as much. I guess
Sure.
you
Yeah.
probably.
No, it makes sense. I mean,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I think back at it where I'm just like I run the scenario occasionally, and I'm just like, man, I mean, just wrecking, going that speed in that side of a truck, that large of a truck, that's just a recipe for just getting
Yeah.
crushed.
Yeah.
Um, and I think maybe in a way, almost maybe landing in water helped.
Yeah, ultimately maybe. You know what I mean? Like because of the fact that it in a fucked up way it gave you that soft landing that you
Yeah,
needed, you know?
I think that I've thought of that where I'm like, maybe landing in the water stopped me from flipping further or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah. Cuz if
Um,
your truck if it when it hit the ice, it just broke and stopped rolling and just started sinking, which is sounds
yeah,
like what happened, then certainly it's possible that if that was flat land, there was no water, no ice, no nothing,
yeah.
you could have just fucking kept rolling God knows
That could
where.
have been that could have been the kill shot,
Yeah. Yeah.
landing on like a flat, hard surface.
Totally. Yeah.
Whereas
That.
instead, I landed in the water and sort of like gently sunk
Yeah. Right.
rather
Yeah.
than smashing into the ground, potentially. So, I mean, the water, I'd say the water was the scariest part
Right. When
where
I
it's
think
like you
about
have
it,
that.
that's by far the scariest part to me. Like sinking. It's like the shit you see it in movies all the time, and everyone while they're watching it, they hold their breath because they're so fucking scared because they're
Yeah.
imagining themselves in it. It's like, did was it? How does it work in real life? Like, does the water just? Because in movies, it's like it's the water slowly coming in, and the person has like time to think. Is in real life,
I,
is it just like water's just like?
I think because the windows broke and everything,
Right. Right. Right.
like when I hit it, I was underwater,
Right.
just immediately, just out of water, in water. So
That's
it must have just,
so scary, dude.
I mean, and it was a heavy truck, so it wasn't like it was light and buoyant.
Yeah.
There were, I mean, the fuel tanks in the back were empty because we had ran all the fuel that day. Um, so there were like big metal fuel tanks in the bed of the truck that are like mounted in there. Um, but yeah, I think just because the weight of the truck and the fact that the windows broke, I think it just. But the realization, the like sudden realization, like, oh, I'm in water. Like
Yeah.
it didn't really register how cold the water was.
Right.
I think just because your adrenaline is
Yeah.
kind of going. Like I didn't think like, oh, this is very cold. I just thought, fuck, I'm going to drown.
Yeah. Could be
Um,
hot water, could be cold water. Doesn't matter. It's gonna drown you either
yeah,
way. Yeah.
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 I, and I was still seat belted in, so I mean, the first thing I did was just let go of my seatbelt. I just got, and that just came right off. And then I just started. I mean, I felt like instinctively, I just started feeling around, like, how the fuck do I get out of here?
Yeah.
But
And do you think that because the windows broke, that also I mean that has to have been a good thing because otherwise you would have had to break them, right? I mean you can't
either that, or if like they didn't break as much as they did, I could have
cut
potentially cut
totally.
myself even
Yeah.
worse. Because I think the only injury I got is when I was feeling around. I
Ah.
flipped my finger
Yeah.
on glass trying to get out because
That makes sense.
I had stitches on the palm of my hand right here, and then I had like 4 stitches on my pinky,
I mean that's
and
so crazy that that's
that
all
was
you
my
walked away
injury.
with.
Yeah,
That is crazy, dude.
I mean my body was super, like my whole body was like purple
Right. Yeah.
for like a week. The soreness was the worst part, like where it was like I had like a seatbelt bruise
Wow.
from the seatbelt holding me in and stuff, and then just like my shins and stuff were just like purple.
Did your
But that, I mean,
airbags go off?
I don't think so.
No.
I don't think so. I I don't remember an airbag or anything like
Yeah.
that. I just remember. I mean, I saw the truck after they might have been, and then like I had a backpack at the time. I had a bunch of like cool film cameras with me and stuff, like
Mm.
rolls of film in my backpack, and I had a backpack that like opened up in the back. It was like a photography backpack,
Right.
and it was unzipped. So I guess when I flipped, my shit just went flinging all over the fucking road. Um, I had like a really nice medium format camera that got destroyed.
Dude, in
Um,
the next couple of days, some like just fucking hitchhikers were like, "Damn, this is a nice fucking camera."
well,
Some
the
dude in Idaho
location
has it
manager
now.
was nice enough to go back out there, and he brought me my backpack, which I still have, which is in
What?
perfect condition.
Wow.
3 of my film cameras I had with me, or 2 of them were fine. That
Whoa.
photo I sent of the helicopter,
Yeah.
I took that day, was in the
Whoa.
camera. So I developed it, and that photo came out. So I do have photos from those rolls of film.
Wow.
Um,
How crazy. That's so crazy,
so yeah,
man.
I sent that photo of the helicopter we were working out of, and it has like the Yellowstone
Yeah.
logo
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
That was in the camera, in one of the cameras that was in the vehicle, and I guess they towed it out, and then took it somewhere, and my friend Craig, who's the pilot, was the one that sent me the photos of like the truck destroyed after, and then the photo of the truck in the water was from the highway patrol
Yeah.
that texted it to me.
Dude.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, in the end, I ended up. My friend Angel came and picked me up, brought me some sweats and like a Chicago Bulls like airbrushed T-shirt that I just threw on, and then I guess you probably borrowed the camera department SUV that they share, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Came and picked me up and walked me back, made sure I got to my hotel room, and then I just sort of I went
My,
and washed all the rocks out of my hair and
yeah, dude. How weird. How weird. So I'm curious. I've heard, when people tell me stories like this, it's like, I'm always curious to ask, what was going to sleep like? Because I've heard people after shit like this where like they're exhausted, but they're just like, once they get into bed, they're like, I can't sleep. Or it's the opposite where it's just like, you're done. Your body's like, nope, you're off now and you go to bed now.
I'd say what you were asking me about, like doing inventory of
Mm-hmm.
everything in the hospital, that took place in bed later, where it was like then all the scenarios really started running,
Right.
uh, where it was like, wow, what the fuck happened? Like where it's sort of the reality of what happened, sort of
Yeah.
settling in.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, the TV world is very small, especially like within camera department
Yeah.
and stuff. So it was like my friend that picked me up talked to another person that knows me, that talked to another person that knows me, that talked like it just. I mean, there's a lot of crew out
Yeah.
there, but it spreads pretty quick.
Yeah.
So like, I just started getting a lot of text messages like, "What happened? What
Yeah, I
happened?"
bet. Yeah.
But it was a long story, so I just typed the whole thing up in like my notes on my iPhone, and then I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna send you this note, and you can sort of read what happened because
Yeah.
I just got tired of telling a story, and then
That would be
um,
so annoying. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
that's
where it
so
was just like I
smart.
wrote it, I
Yeah.
wrote it once, and I was like, I'm I'm built for efficiency, man. So I just wrote it one time and was sending it, and I was like, yeah, just read the note and then ask me questions after.
Do
Um,
you like now, obviously not on that show because everybody probably already knows, but like, do you ever, are you ever on a job where someone's like, "Oh, I heard about that."
oh yeah,
Oh,
oh
really?
yeah. Well, I did more. I've done a lot of aerial jobs with
Mm.
the Hoskings because they have a company called Aces High and Hosking Aviation, and they basically sort of, I mean, they do everything. Like I did the last two Christopher Nolan films with them,
Oh, nice.
and like they did Nope and like
Mm.
like everything. So all those movies. So even on like Tenet, or I worked on Tenet and like Oppenheimer, and there was like a few people where it was like, oh yeah, like I mentioned, like, oh yeah, I crashed one of their trucks, and they were like, you're that guy. Like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're famous, dude. You're fucking car crash famous now.
I mean, with crew, they're like, oh, that's wild. But then if like a transpo guy, like a Teamster guy
Mm-hmm.
hears it, they're just like, they're like,
Right.
fuck, because they're just like, yeah, well, that's what you get for driving. And I'm
Dude,
like,
that makes
well,
so much sense. That makes so much sense. Transport guys are
you
like,
know, the Teamster dudes where they're
yeah,
just like, dumbass. Like
yeah,
they just,
yeah,
those guys look at me like I'm an idiot, and then like the crew people are like, wow, I can't.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, it definitely had gotten around. Like it's like people know about it, and there was a few executives that I had never met on Yellowstone, and
Mm-hmm.
then season 5, we were out in the middle of nowhere shooting like this big intro scene to season 5, where like all these cows run down, or these horses run down a hill and they cross a river.
Mm.
And I finally was like, I was on main unit that day, and they were all there, and I was like, hey, do you guys remember the guy that crashed the truck first season? They were like, that was you. Like there was
Wow.
like this whole um, there was like this whole like realization like I was the same person that
Yeah, yeah. I mean, dude, if it went the other way, and I don't, there's no reason to explore this because it's whatever, it is what it is. But
no,
like,
go
it
go.
would have fucking like, like that would have fucked up the show. Like people would
Yeah,
remember that show
yeah,
as the one that the fucking guy died on.
especially among crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I mean maybe not so much viewers and stuff, but like especially among crew, it would have been like notorious.
But in the industry in general, people like think about that shit all the time. With certain movies, somebody dies on, that never goes away. That stigma or that memory never goes away. You know?
You hear a movie and you're like, oh, that's the one so and so died
dude,
on.
100%.
So and so died on. Yeah,
which is a nightmare for the person who makes a movie. And then
that would have been like a real scarlet letter for
exactly.
For Yellowstone or Taylor Sheridan.
Yeah, dude, it could dude, Yellowstone maybe wouldn't have become the sensation it became if you died that day. So
they needed me to live.
Everyone on that show owes you a thank you for surviving that day. Yeah,
thanks for surviving.
Yeah,
it was. Yeah, I mean, that's definitely the wildest. I mean, I worked in reality TV for a long time, and like, I had experienced some crazy shit before, but that was definitely like, wow, like that.
I mean, it doesn't get crazier than it doesn't really get crazier than that, you know.
No, it's the closest. It's definitely the closest I've ever personally come to dying.
Yeah,
that I know of. Like
yeah,
maybe,
right.
Yeah, that I was aware of, but yeah, it was yeah, it was definitely it definitely makes you reflect, where you're like, wow, that was
yeah, dude.
That was a lucky one.
The sliding doors thing of like, if that little thing went that way a little bit more, or that, you know, it's like the possibilities, as we were saying, are endless. But you're here, you didn't die. All you got was a little pinky scar, and
I just have a little scar on my pinky. That's it. It gets a little sore when it's cold out, and you know, that's my cross to bear. But...
Yeah. That's a cool thing to actually have. It's like the one.
Yeah.
Of all things to have to carry with it, it's just like a little tiny scar on your pinky.
Well, yeah. People will ask me like, "Oh, well, what happened to you?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
That, and then, you know, those got removed 5 days later, and I was sore for 2 weeks, and other than that, I was good to go.
Yeah, dude. Well,
my family got to come. That was fun, and
hell yeah.
My son came and hung out, and he was 3 at the time. He's 8 now, so that's about right.
Nice.
But yeah, man, it was it's an interesting story. I've always wanted to go on one of those like I shouldn't have survived shows where they do like a reenactment.
Right. Yeah.
I have one of my closest buddies. He's in camera department now, but he's Chris Rabb. He was Rabb himself from Jackass and the CK.
Oh yeah.
We always talked about doing that where he plays me in the dramatic reenactment, and I sit and do the interview.
And they recreate it, like they actually have the
some of those shows, like they'll do like, you know, like the really cheesy dramatic recreations.
Oh, dude. I watch those shows. Like I love those.
Oh yeah, like, and I was like, I could submit that, and they could at least recreate the portion of like me in the road and like yelling, and I think Brad would be a great.
Yeah, dude.
I think Brad would be a great actor to play me.
Yeah, he portray you and the role of a lifetime, dude.
Yeah, it would be. It really would.
Yeah, that's crazy, man.
Yeah, man.
Well, I'm happy.
I appreciate you.
I'm happy you're alive. I'm very happy you're alive. Not just because you got to tell me the story, but because it's better that you are alive than you are not alive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Especially because you got a kid, dude. That would have been a fucking tragedy, man. So like everything's.
And now I have a 1-year-old. So.
Hey. All right.
So also it's like, not only did I stay around for the kid, but
you made another one.
To procreate.
Yeah. All right. Well, the world thanks you. I thank you.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you for this, and thank you for surviving as well. Take care of yourself, man.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah.